No, Walkers. Herschel Walkers.
Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the Health and Human Services Parks and Recreation Committee to order. Roll call, please, Amy.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Christians?
Here.
Ms. Mayette?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here. Minutes from October 13.
I'll make a motion that the minutes printed and taken from October 13 meeting be approved as published.
Support Walker.
It's been moved by Christian, supported by Walker. Would there be any discussion? Would there be any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Changes to the agenda. Would there be any changes to the agenda? Would there be any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for an approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Moved by Begg, second by Hardy. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Public comment. Would there be any public comment at this time? Hearing none. Crystal Valley Dam discussion.
I have provided you a copy of the Spicer feasibility study, just those pages that provided the options for you, so that you could discuss those three different options that are in there.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes,
Can
sir.
I make a comment on this?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if it would be best for us to listen to what is said about the Crystal Valley Dam. And we need to make a decision by the first of the year, but with the thought that there not be a decision made today, that we just use this for an information gathering time in case we have to find any more information later, that we just consider, let's see how things go, but it may be worthwhile just to listen to the information and have a formal decision, you know, at one of the later meetings.
Mr. Heislip, would you like to speak?
Yes, sir. I have a little trouble hearing you this morning. Thank you for everybody that's here. I would like to hope that we will remain in good stead for the next 3 or 4 years, with Lord willing. And this difficult decision will be in the best interest of all the people. I know it's not going to be easy. It probably won't be a lot of fun at times, but it can be. I will say that of all the public comment that I have received, I finally got one in-person negative comment yesterday. And it was from the gentleman that also suggested, oh, I gave you one.
Oh, you did that part of it.
Yeah. He also suggested that we could save money by removing the fire department from the township, so I put his suggestion in the same category as not valid. I shortened up my 10-page presentation to a single easy page. You've got a lot to decide. I'm going to start out by saying I need a little bit more time to get better information, but I have some phenomenally good information here. Spicer's done an incredible good job at presenting their end of it to help you make a decision, but I have gone out and gotten some bids that will help you make a decision, and I think that we can save the dam for a very small investment. We need to find out what that total number is going to be so you can make an informed decision, and I'd like to suggest that whenever the first meeting is in December, I will have a couple of more bids to back up what I have here today. The negatives on taking the dam out is it looks like if you look at the deed that I found in 1934, that also means we're gonna lose the county park. That just to me is, that can't happen. So let's save the dam. How are we gonna do it? I had an incredible conversation with Becky DeWind from DeWind Dewatering, and she said that we have a system and we will help you out the best that we can. She says, give me a few minutes, I'll give you a quote right now. They're willing to build with their system a bentonite and Portland cement wall, 480 feet long, 20 feet deep, 27 inches wide, that will cover the entire dam. That's going to eliminate the seepage, the critters, give it a mechanical barrier. It should give us another 100 years on the dam. They can't go around the front of the spillway. Their equipment doesn't do that. I put in a photograph of a piece of equipment that she sent. If you'll give me until the first meeting in December, I'll get you their website, and they have some great presentations in there. So $130,250, that's an incredible number. I said, well, how about if we only go to 15 feet? She said, listen to me. This is a one-time deal. We're doing you a favor. This is the number. Here's what you need. You need a soil test. I have no idea what that costs, but I put a bid in here. You don't need more engineering. We know that engineers cost money, but we have years and decades worth of engineering already. Trike Excavating gave me a bid to remove all the trees, grind the stumps, put down silt fence, and add a limestone wall. I've added both of those numbers in there, so they're solid. I don't know what sheet pile costs. I'd like to get that bid and measure up what we would need. Maybe you could work with me on that. I'll give you at least a strong estimate. I put in a pretty high number of $50,000. I think that's over the top. We need to get a local contractor to help unload the bags of bentonite and the Portland cement. I presume we could, I will go ask somebody like Dan Halleck and say, hey, can you help us out? What would you give us for a bid? And I'll come back to you with that. So we're looking at a total of $308,216 to preserve the dam for, I'm not going to say forever, but it eliminates the seepage. It puts in it provides us with a mechanical barrier. We already know we have a low hazard, low risk dam. Now, that extra bit of time, there's a lot of things that we can add into this that will give us some pretty good public relations. We can talk about a fish dam, we can talk about hydropower, but right now you have to decide, are we going to save the dam or are we going to tear it out? I think we have a strong reason to save it, and I don't think numbers are bad. Now, we've been told that there isn't any grant money, but the more I hear about grants, there are different dollars available from different organizations, but it takes somebody above my pay grade knowledge to help with that. Maybe Gary can find somebody, or the sheriff, or somebody. There's somebody out there that can help us find some money. Once we get a solid number, I think we can even go to the local farmers and say, would you mind helping us? Maybe the county has some money someplace. Maybe you can help us. So it's a short presentation. Everything is here. If you have, does anybody have a question? I'd be glad to answer it. Sir?
Paul?
Yes, sir.
DeWind Dewatering, I'm a little familiar with them, but have they done this type of dam any place in Michigan before, or have they done similar to this?
I can't say Michigan. They're currently and may be done with a very large dam in Ohio. They went down 75 feet. I have a photo. In fact, that photo you have in the presentation, there you go. They do lots of projects. I understand that they do mechanical projects for buildings, and they've been around a long time. They're not a fly-by-night organization. Becky DeWind is absolutely a hoot to talk to on the phone. I can't wait to meet her. Very direct, very easy to understand language. It's on my level, and I will find out if they have done anything in Michigan. I know they have in Ohio.
And my question for asking that, if you know, if they have done anything in Michigan, then they will have the Eagle will know who they are. You know, if they've worked, and you know, if there's a proposal done, Eagle will understand it.
Becky was very familiar with Eagle and the personnel at the time, so I will readdress that. I would like to find out from DeWind exactly what they need, so when I go to Halleck or someone else and say, what will it cost us to do this manual labor? They need some equipment to offload they use those big super bags, and that's gonna be our contribution, is you need to supply somebody locally so we don't send our people up from Zeeland, so I thought that was fair.
And one other thing, so the board members know this, that when DeWinds built their cottage on Silver Lake, so everybody in the public knows, I did furnish the materials when they built that cottage with Northwind Construction at the time. I don't know anything about their business, I know what they did, but I did have a relationship where I furnished materials. And I just want that to be out there so everybody understands that I did.
Great.
I do know.
Mr. Beggs?
So, Mr. Heslop, we had a conversation about this yesterday, and I just asked him, the deed that he referenced, he gave me a copy of it. He required a blood sample and extensive legal documents to hand it over to me to make sure he gets it back. But I just want to read the pertinent portion because I'm not a lawyer and I need to know what it means. This is dated April 27th, 1934, so this appears to be the deed from when the Poe family and a couple other families sold this land to the township for $1. It appears, a quick 3-minute reading of it this morning. But there's a paragraph in here that says, "It is understood and agreed that this conveyance is made only for such period of time as said dam is maintained at said point, and that in the event said dam is removed from such site or is destroyed by the elements and is not replaced for a period of 1 year from and after the date of the entire destruction thereof, that all flowage rights granted herein shall thereupon revert to the first parties named herein, their heirs, personal representatives, or assigns." I'm concerned, partly because I'm not a lawyer and I don't know exactly what that means. I guess I'd be curious to know exactly what flowage rights means, and I tried to do a quick Google search and haven't had time to read. But that paragraph, as a regular guy, appears to me to lean toward, if we remove the dam, then the property reverts back to the heirs of the original owners. And I don't know if we've gotten, I think we need some legal opinions on that. What are you holding up there, Paul?
This is a legal opinion Brian Monton did back in February 21 of 22.
Yep.
So yes, we did get an answer from Brian as to the revision of that.
What's the nuts and bolts of it?
Nuts and bolts, last page.
Page 3, Paul, if I could.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
Under flowage rights. The flowage rights easement does not contain any language that would preclude the removal of the dam or require the property owner's consent to remove the dam. In fact, the flowage rights easement specifically contemplates the dam's removal and subsequent revision to the property owners. Nowhere in the flowage rights easement does it provide or require that the consent of the property owners to remove the dam. Thus, there is no contractual right to the continued maintenance of the dam. Further, on page 4, fourth paragraph down, the flowage rights easement, which is recorded by the Oceana County Register of Deeds, specifically contemplates the removal of the dam and the revision of the flooded land to the original property owners. Brian goes on further to basically suggest that, as stated, the abutting landowners have no property interest or right in the continued maintenance of the dam of Crystal Pond at its current level. The removal of the dam is within the discretion of the county and would not constitute an abuse of power directly aimed at the property. Thus, the removal of the dam and consequently of Crystal Pond would not be taking under the United States and the Michigan Constitution. And then conclusion, removal of the dam by the county would not breach the obligations under the flowage right agreements. The property owners abutting the Crystal Valley Pond have no riparian rights that would support a claim that they would be entitled to the continued existence of the pond at this current level. Trespass or nuisance claims arising out of the removal of the dam would be barred by governmental immunity. And while inverse condemnation claims would be specific, it's difficult to foresee a scenario where the abutting property owners would have a viable claim for the inverse condemnation of the unconstitutional taking of their property. In this letter somewhere, he does go into the fact that it's going to be very difficult to find those property owners because so many years have transpired since that time. So this was dated February 21st, 2022, and that's what was found by our attorney, by the attorney that we asked an opinion for.
So that appears to address mostly the issue of the current property owners and recourse toward the county if the dam's removed. But he does make mention of the reversion of property to the original owners.
They would have to go to circuit court to that property owner would have to be found and go to circuit court and get a conveyance. And I'm not an attorney, I'm just reading what's here and having spent some time with Brian regarding this. The conveyance back to that property owner would be difficult to prove.
Okay.
And Mr. Beggs, where I was headed when I started this was paragraph 5 from Brian reads, upon removal of the dam, the property covered by the flowage rights easements would revert back to the successors in title to the original property owners. Persons with claims to the ownership of the property now comprising of Crystal Pond would have to take appropriate legal measures to assert such claims. This would likely take the form of circuit court action to amend the Maxim addition. That's Maxim's a name out there in the valley. However, a comprehensive title search would need to be performed to accurately evaluate the property ownership rights of the property now comprising Crystal Pond. And we have not taken that action. And when I was in the real estate mortgage business, we relied heavily on title searches when there was a conveyance of property to find those exclusions to the title. And I used Urick and Montan extensively. I used Sickinga, Prince, Barecki, and Nicholas. I've used Montan and Prince. So I'm a little familiar with this. We do not have that legal opinion right now. And that is the one thing that you brought up initially, is that without that legal opinion to know what we would be doing after a dam were removed, that's a good thing to know where it's headed.
Right, because I'd sure hate to remove the dam and then find out we've got heirs that have been watching this and all of a sudden...
There are.
And so it sounds like maybe it's just the impoundment property that would be in question, not necessarily the residences around, but again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a mechanic.
And on that same venue, there's about 35 acres involved in that deed. So that encompasses basically that quarter section right there. I didn't bring it up other than Liber and Page because the group that has asked me to represent them here has said, we will go to court. Well, I don't want to do that.
Well, and also when we started this discussion, I went over to Rick Hodges' office, and that's where we initially found a file folder on the dam that had been in the Register of Deeds office for many, many years. So Rick does have the initial documents. And going back to what I was saying about ordering title insurance is where we basically went after a title search. If you remember, Hugh LaRios owned Oceana Abstract. This was many years ago, but Hugh had been collecting every title on all the real estate and kept it on file. It finally went over across the street. Oceana Land Title had it. The building was sold. Gail Forner bought it. The bank, when FMB sold to Huntington, the basement was full of title. All of those documents that are necessary to do this research have been basically disposed of, shredded, and gone from our county.
Hmm.
So we don't have the resources that Hugh Lurie would have had. He would have been the man to ask, and Hugh could have found that answer for you. Ted Karras in Fremont, I think he ended up with the last bit of that. Gail Forner might have had something to do with all this, but I know when they emptied out the basement of the Oceana Bank, every mortgage that we had at that bank, you know, all of this antiquated title research material has been replaced by a blanket title insurance policy that doesn't necessarily go through all of the steps right back to the original land grant. And that property out there, if you'll recall, was part of the Indian reservation when President Grant moved the Ottawa Band up here, and it's known as Injun Town, the valley proper, and that was government land when this all initially started to get into the title that we're talking about, the Poe family and others that have been there for so long. So I did a lot of work there with what Mr. Hyslop had provided me about doing dewatering, and also I have had a very, very good conversation with Dan Halleck. And if you may recall, Dan Halleck was involved in the Upper Silver Lake issue. Hardman came down and we took care of that problem. Also Upper Silver Lake has been another dam issue that Dan is familiar with. And if you'll go to Gales Pond, you'll see that we did save Gales Pond with sheet. So what we're talking about here today is not out of the scope of things that the county has already done in the park system. We already saved Gales Pond with sheet, and Hardman Construction in Ludington, you know, they're the go-to guys around here for driving sheet down, and Dan and I spoke about what could happen in the midst of all that, and you know, Dan said that it is all extremely feasible. This is not much more than an irrigation pond for one of those large growers out there. And the sediment that we're speaking of, if we were to save the dam, repair the dam, the sediment need not be pumped immediately. That's something that could come with time. Department of Natural Resources, Fisheries Division may be interested in looking at a way to get the fish over the dam. That's part of the concern, that the dam is impeding the fish traveling upstream. There's some other little things that we do need to look at, but it's not out of our scope to save the dam with the methods that are on the table right now.
Mr. Erickson. So
Mr. Morris.
This whole title conversation that we're potentially could get into was only if the dam is removed.
Correct.
So let's say the dam is removed, that county park now becomes no longer a county park. Then, like Mr. Hyslop was saying,
potentially the revision of the real estate going back to the original title holders would change the complexion of this piece of property. Not knowing, because it has to take a circuit court action, they've got to go hire an attorney, they've got to file in Brad's office, they've got to bring that here for Judge Springstead. You know, there's a long road to hoe here that we could get bound up with time and energy spent going in a direction that we might not want to.
do we know if those families, whoever the heirs are of those properties,
We did have them here in February.
Yep.
and they would pursue, I mean, you know, considering, let's say that's removed, they would pursue wanting that property back. Does anybody know that?
From what I was told, they would.
My guess is there'd be two options. They would pursue it unless we purchase it again. Who wants bottomland from an old lake? I mean, it'd essentially be buying a muck farm, but
Yeah, I'm talking more for the county park area, I guess, is
Right.
where I'm thinking.
And historically, that dam has had that sediment removed and spread on farmers' fields. That did happen in the past. So that is something that's not out of the question. The report comes back. We don't have heavy metals in there. It's not like we'd have any Eagle issues of taking care of this sediment with the soil samples that were pulled. And also what we have to remember is that the dam proper is built on a railroad right-of-way and a trestle. That's how this initially was conceived, and that's back when the railroad was going to come through Crystal Valley and head through Elbridge to Goodrich and then head to Grand Rapids. And that failed. You know, with the advent of automobiles and transportation, there was the need to have the railroad leave Crystal Valley and go to Grand Rapids, that was dropped. But the first dam was built and failed. I think we've shown you pictures of the very first dam, and then it was rebuilt. And the reason that it was rebuilt is Crystal Valley was a large receiving town for row crops. Pickles were huge out there, cukes, the whole 9 yards, beans, squash. So back in that day when my dad was a boy, that dam was used in that pond for your field hands to wash, because farmers didn't have running water, hot water. That thing didn't happen. So when you took the last load of pickles into Sousers or Libovitz or any one of these guys, you'd go take a bath and you'd get cleaned up and you'd ride your buckboard home and get up the next morning to pick pickles. So it served a tremendous historical use in the valley, and like Lee had said, you know, hey, you get into 300 grand, 400 grand, 500 grand. Some of those green machines that we look out there are running 300, 400, 500 grand. When you look at one of those fields and you watch them pulling carrots out there, and you consider the land and the water that they're pumping now to maintain those crops, to own that land, to pay the taxes to the county and the state, they've had a generational contribution to our county that would be hard to, I don't feel comfortable, wouldn't feel comfortable going in any township and not listening very, very closely to what they might have on their mind. And like Lee had said, there are places where funding is available. Just because we've got this 525 that's out there to remove dams doesn't mean we have to use it. But I've used a firm in Grand Rapids. If you have a specific need, you make the telephone call and you can contract a company that will go out and find those dollars, you know.
Paul, can I?
Yes, sir.
It appears as though where we're at now is there's basically two options: to remove the dam or to stabilize the dam. We know to remove the dam that there are grant opportunities to remove it, but along with that we need to set a timetable if we're doing it, some type of timetable. I'm sure that's what Eagle is looking for. And if we leave the dam, we need to define what type of system we're going to do, whether it's wind dewatering and in combination with sheet piling, like Lee has said. You know, we need to define those things. We need to come up with a cost of all of them, and it appears we have just about all of the costs, but along with that we're going to need to come up with some type of a funding system. How are we going to fund this, and what's our timetable going to be? And the problem is that we've got roughly a month and a half to come up with a plan on what direction we're going. Now, we've been told that by the first meeting in December we can have the firm closed. And I prefer to refer to it as budget numbers on this, not bid numbers, not anything concrete, but just budget numbers on how we move forward, how much it's going to cost to move forward. We already know what the budget numbers are for removal from the engineering study we had, but I do not believe the engineers looked at the type of stabilization system that you've looked at on this.
That's my understanding.
So we need budget numbers for both of them and a thought on how we're going to fund it.
Mr. Erickson.
Yes, sir.
A couple things I noticed, Lee, in your quote, it says no funds estimated to do spillway work.
Correct.
And there's also nothing in there for the hydraulic dredging.
Correct.
Okay, because previously on some of the reports that we had, that the hydraulic dredging with no restrictions could be up to $200,000, and hydraulic dredging with restrictions could be $400,000
Yep.
on the low end.
It's my understanding that Eagle isn't asking for dredging at this time. They're asking for whether or not we want to keep the dam or take the dam out. So I didn't spend energy and time on that. And to your questions, there's only a couple of things I don't have, and I think that Spicer probably, or maybe you have, some good numbers on what it would take to maybe not make a brand new spillway, but certainly make it a lot better than it is today. So I deliberately didn't put those in there because I think you're after numbers that you can rely on. If we didn't have 2 national holidays coming up, I'd say I'd have it by the next meeting. But Thanksgiving and of course deer hunting.
And all I'm speaking about is, from my perspective, I think the direction that we need to go, you know, and we have what we need to pull together before the first of the year to get back to Eagle.
Tracy?
Just a couple things I wanted to point out in the information that was provided to us by Spicers, and this hasn't been talked about at all. They recommended, or they noted that there hasn't been a detailed geotechnical analysis done. I don't know what that means, but wanted to point that out. And then they also noted a void under the concrete. They don't know how large the void is, but there is a void under there.
I took those comments into consideration and felt that putting in an impervious wall would not eliminate those negative points, but it would give us time to find a feasible and affordable solution to it, whether it's an injection of some type, or even if it failed completely, we still have a primary defense system to the east of the dam that would solve almost any horrible accident we could have right now. The void is caused by water seepage, and when John and I and Spicer went out there, it was pretty easy to see that there's water in the soils. That's just how earthen dams work. So making that impervious and sheeting the leakage, which is probably around the spillway, virtually eliminates that for not just a couple of years, but hopefully for 100 years.
To put that in perspective, I know this because I had the opportunity to be on top of it at one time when they were doing the pump storage station in Ludington. There's voids in that every year, and they pump large amounts of grout and concrete in those voids every year in that pump storage station. When you have an impalement like that, you know, pretty amazing to actually see how they do it and what they do. But it's not unusual for dams to have voids.
Mr. Ruggles?
I just woke up this morning thinking of this, knowing that I was gonna come here. And what popped into my head was, because what you're having to put in the impervious water, you know, stopping the water from going through the earthen dam, why couldn't we've got enough farmers around, put a few pumps on, pump the water down, and so the water's not going over the spillway. We've got masonry saws, cut a spot out as wide as what they need, and have them put that same stuff down underneath the spillway, the 20 feet deep or however deep they're going. And why couldn't that happen? And that would cure a multitude of problems.
I approached Becky DeWind on that, and she was pretty emphatic, so we're not going to put our equipment in that kind of hazardous it's a big piece of equipment. I'll show you a picture of it. It's like a massive excavator with a huge trencher in the front of it. So they'll go the 480 feet, and they'll go right up to the spillway itself, but they won't go underneath the spillway. That's why the sheet piling out to stop it.
I'm not saying go under, I'm saying go through it.
Yeah, I brought that up. She said, no, we won't do that.
Lee?
Yes.
The quote that you got is for 480 feet.
Right.
In the dam Eagle project information, they say that the dam is 700 feet long.
I don't know where they came up with that.
Okay, so that's what their engineers are saying.
Yeah, I think that's an error.
Okay. But so if it was 700 feet, it would be a different level of cost than what you're talking about.
It would be.
Yeah.
I've measured it, I think you've been out
I
there.
don't believe that dam is 700 feet long.
No, that may be the entire piece of property, I'm not sure.
I think it's in the 500 to 600 foot
Yeah.
range.
That's the point.
Mr. Warren, would you like to?
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah, please.
It seems like a lot of people have done a lot of homework on this, which is a good thing because you're educating yourself on what needs to happen. I do want to point out though, first of all, nothing can happen on this, whether it's removal, repair, anything, without an Eagle permit. Now, Eagle is going to require engineered plans. No matter what the method for work is, they are going to require engineered plans to get a permit. They're not going to, have DeWin just come in going, no, we're going to pump grout in there and say, okay, go ahead. It's not going to happen. So just be aware, you have to have engineered plans to get a permit to do anything on this. And that will take some time and cost. And second of all, it's nice that, you're getting some quotes now and that type of thing, but still, if you're expending public money of any type, you're going to need to bid this out when it comes time to do it. Otherwise, you open yourself up to a lot of criticisms.
Well, unless it's a specialized project.
But this isn't something that only one person can do.
What I'm
There are
saying-
other contractors who can do this type of thing.
I don't think there's anybody that can do what DeWin DeWatering does.
I beg to differ.
Okay, then give us the names.
It's just pressure grouting. Lots of companies do pressure grouting. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
all I had to say.
No, and I appreciate that, but the more names we have and stuff, I'm big on more than one price. I've brought that up several times.
Well, you really should. That's just doing due diligence, and proper care of the public funds.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
John, can I?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, Mr. Hardy.
Just a quick question. With the removal estimates that they had, I didn't see any hydraulic dredging or any dredging at all. Would that be part of the removal too, if they?
That's a separate item.
It was a separate item, yeah, that they took into account in the original study.
Okay.
It would not necessarily have to be done, but you're going to be left with all the silt in there if it isn't.
Yeah.
Some dredging would probably have to be done in association with a removal. It does not have to be done in association with a repair. It's just going to keep building up though over time.
Thank you.
Yep.
But Eagle did say that there was some grant funds available for removal.
Oh yes, there's grant funds available for removal.
That was 525, right?
65.
Mr. Beggs.
So, John, do you, just looking at projects like this, engineering, I'm guessing 100 grand?
Maybe in that area.
Yeah,
It's hard to tell.
hard to say,
because
but-
there again, I don't know what level needs to be done at this point. Certainly geotechnical investigations would have to be done. You'd have to get in there with a drill rig and pop some holes in there to see what you're dealing with.
Yep. And then, so like Mr. Erickson said, the dredging, if we repair it, the dredging is really to improve the water, the pond.
The
Cold.
habitat,
It's coldness.
yes.
We
It's-
want to lower the temperature of the
Yeah,
water
yeah.
that's being
It's a
impounded.
habitat restoration.
Right,
It's more
so
what the
it's,
dredging would be
that
about.
could be a phase 2, down the road, and so, but it's important to remember that it's something that probably, otherwise the pond's just gonna close up and it's gonna become a stream from across the road straight to our dam and just flow like a stream.
Yes,
So,
but that would take many, many years.
It'll be a
It's-
while,
It's not
but-
something that's gonna happen
Right.
next year type of thing.
But
That would take a long time to fill that pond
The
completely
one
up.
thing that I wanna make sure we do, I don't want this to be a 10-year Band-Aid, and I don't think any of the suggestions for repair so far have been that, but we wanna make generational decisions here, and unfortunately those come at a cost, so we wanna make sure we do this right and not just put a sticker over it and call it good. The other thing with repair that we have to keep in mind that Spicer mentioned is these changing requirements for capacity of the spillway, that if we repair and then 5 years, they changed the requirements for the capacity of the spillway. We repaired a spillway that's undersized for the requirements, and we still have a problem.
Right.
So there's a lot of aspects to this issue.
And that's one of the things that would be taken into account in the engineering phase. Spicer just did a preliminary here. They did not really do any design engineering. They looked at it and said, okay, if we put, you know, X amount of feet of steel wall, here's what we think that's gonna cost, but it's not designed. Anything else, they just kinda took a stab at it based on things they've seen before. Nothing is really designed yet, so you've gotta take that into account when you look at costs. There's no fixed design to get a cost on at this point.
Yeah.
That would be the first step in the process, is doing a physical design that's approved by Eagle, and then you can get costs based on that.
Mr. Morris?
Thank you. So, just because that's the way I'm wired, I'm just going to be blunt. If we look at this just funding wise, the best decision would be to get rid of the dam. I mean, it just is. Now, with me being said, with that being, you know, current and future. With that being said, there's value in history, sentimentalism, because that's really why we would save it. It's for that reason right there, and there's value there. So I want to give credence to that. So I look at this as it's also more of a localized area, like a dam. You know, Silver Lake, you keep the dam because there's economic benefits to the whole county. You know, and it impacts a whole lot of people. And Crystal Valley, it's more for like those two reasons, and also for the people. So I get that. So I want to consider those things in our decision as well. I just want to say I see, for me to support something, that I think the township would have to, either through private donations or through a millage or some way, would have to help make this happen. Whether it be, you know, like in May, put it on the ballot, you know, dam saving, you know, millage or whatever, you know, where half of this costs are covered or a certain portion are covered. Ideally, I'd like to give it back to the township, so it's no longer, you know, it's no longer the county that's going to be dealing with it, you know, the repairs. I like the long-term approach that you've looked into. It's more of a 100-year thing versus a 10-year, just to, you know, fix where we're looking at this again. But I guess I'm wondering, somebody told me there's something about we can't give it back to the township. One time it was the townships, and now we give the county. I mean, and what do you guys think about that? What's the township's feeling on, you know, if that's even something we can do, is give it back? So now the township really has to work through.
If I may, no conflict intended, but Becky DeWin said we would not need the engineering done. That's a huge savings. To your point, it would be a little bit like a new car dealer taking back a car that's 75 years old. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's been poorly maintained, and that wouldn't make sense. I certainly would bring it up as a representative for the people. That's my job. I would rather work with you. It's a county park, it's a county dam. It's been poorly maintained, but we can solve that. We can't take care of what our predecessors did. We can only do what our grandkids are going to get. So that's the venue that I would like to pursue. I need a little more time to get you some better numbers. I will check to see if engineering is needed. That certainly raises the menu a lot. You guys will have to take care of the legal side. I know that the group that's most vocal about the pond and the dam have agreed to, if we need to put together a legal fund, we'll do it, and, you know, bang on the table. I would like to avoid that with all my energy.
Let's spend the money on repairing it rather than hire lawyers.
I would rather figure out a way somehow to make everybody happy. I know that's difficult, but it is feasible.
Well, I guess so. That's my question. Do you anticipate? Do you think, to the best of your knowledge, that people in the township, stakeholders, would be able to provide enough funds to, you know, match something?
It's an interesting question. On my trip to Houston, I'd taken along the master plan, which I discovered hasn't been revamped since it was processed by Wimserdex. The major part of the plan that was submitted to the county was we are an agricultural community. We're not gonna have a new school system, we're not gonna have theater, we're gonna be an agricultural community. One of our complexities is that we have poor soil for soil erosion impact. So, John and I have talked about that, that's one of my concerns, is we lose a lot of soil into that creek, and that's why it ends up in the pond. Take the dam up, more of it goes down the stream, that's just the way it is. We can get into the soil erosion later, but it is something that we need to address. Will the people do it? No, we lost 135 people, we're down to 635 now. The census says we're gonna be down to 400 in another 20 years. Are they all gonna be farmers, or will we have contaminated the soil so bad that now we can bring in the solar farms? I don't know that. I don't think that they're gonna put up, are we gonna be at 300,000? No. Are we gonna be at $500,000? Maybe. Can we amortize that out over 30 years and it costs us 10 grand a year? I don't know. I really don't know. People can talk. Talk is cheap.
Well, that's where I thought if it's a millage, you know, it's on the ballot in May, that's where people can talk with their pocketbooks and, you know,
Yep.
and then they make the decision whether this dam is, you know, if they love it enough to put their money where the mouth is, then hey, then we'll support them in that. That's the thought process that
It would take the next tier of people, and I only mean that in the nicest way. Right now, we're working hard on the transfer station, which lost $50,000 last year. We're selling cards for $30. It's a deal. Only 100 people out of 600 take advantage of it, so 500 are supporting 100. So we're gonna vote on that, or we're gonna make a decision next Monday, and we've gotten a lot of feedback, because I've been asking for a lot of input. And the same guy that said to get rid of the fire department yesterday also said we just get rid of the trash. No, he said keep the trash, but don't raise the price. Yeah, that's government money, I pay my taxes, so we're having a hard time getting people to say, well, they think raising the price by twofold, $60 a year is gonna be a huge impact on their budget. To tell them, oh, we wanna save the dam, and we're gonna ask you for $900 a year, I might as well bring my own chickens and hot tar. I mean,
Mr. McKean.
I'd just like to look back how we got to where we're at today. And the 6 years I've been on the Parks and Rec Commission, I've had 2 letters from Eagle Dam Inspection Unit saying that our dam needs to have major repairs. And I believe, if I'm not wrong, John, you can fill me in, but how much money have we spent since 2000 on the dam?
The 2 rounds of work that were done, I wanna say off the top of my head, was like $180,000.
So
total
would
between the two.
200,000 is a round number that you would?
Thereabouts,
Okay.
yes.
So that 200,000 that we've already spent over the last 20 years is not there anymore. It's washed away down the stream. Wherever you'd like to say it went, they're not functional. This is what I was given, I think either Lee, I think Ron might have given me this actually, but this is what it looked like before the dam.
Yeah, I remember this.
From 1934 or something like that. So we're going through a process, as you all know, with Stony Creek. Not Crystal Creek, but Stony Creek. And what Stony Creek will look like in 5 years from now is something you need to consider what Crystal Creek could look like at some point. So I'm only drawing attention to the fact that we have spent $200,000 of money. You know what the parks budget is. The reason we don't do maintenance on the dam, which we should be, we don't have funding to do it. That's flat out the reason. And we live in a county that we all love and we all respect, and we want to do the best thing we can for the county and for the land. We're only here for so long in our lives. And the fact is that we have to find a way to keep everybody happy, but we also have to keep nature in balance as well. And Mark Tonello is the fish biologist that we work with from the DNR. He's more than happy to come and speak with the county board or anybody else. He's very vocal about fish passage. We also have Wimserdick, which I had Fallon here a couple months ago, and also Conservation Resource Alliance. They both have become very good funding partners for projects that we have in the county. They would like to expand things that we do. Wimserdick and CRA are both aware of this potential project. They could potentially find funding for whatever decision comes to mind. But the fact is, we continue to spend money. 10 years from now, we're going to face with the same thing, only probably more cost.
Thank you. I just have a couple thoughts that I threw out this. You know, we talked about soils. We talked about dams going out, and going back to when the Hart Dam went out on the 11-inch rain, that never would have happened had we lowered the gates. That was a human error, is the reason the Hart Dam went out. And when we breached the dam with the excavators that day to try and relieve the pressure on the structure of our hydro plant, that's when the highway bridges went out. You know, if you all remember, they talked about a rush of water down in Pentwater that was going to come up over the banks. And part of the reason I want to bring this up is 40 years ago, Harold Clifford Hall, Cliff Hall, was a civil engineer in Hart, and soils and structures was his expertise, and he was very involved in the rebuilding of Hart Lake. And at that point in time, they did not want to put another dam back in Hart. That was at the forefront right there. But because of the hydroelectrical generation of that plant and the way that the power companies were looking at it, we were able to keep Hart Lake. That was the biggest thing because of the property values on that lake. But one thing that I saw fisheries not do, which I've been upset about this forever because I grew up on the Pentwater River upstream of that dam, is they didn't put a fish ladder in. I mean, you know, here we are, we've got a breached dam, we've got everybody in the world looking at what happened in Hart, Michigan, and they did not install a fish ladder in the Pentwater River that goes up to the Huff Tile. And the Huff Tile comes from Gales Pond, and the Huff Tile at one time was the leading trout stream for German Brown and Brook in the state. People came from all over to Hart, Michigan on a railroad, and they went out to the Huff Tile to fish. And when they didn't put that fish ladder in, I was very upset about that. But Cliff Hall is the kind of guy, he would send Jim Dillingham out, and Jim would bore those samples, and they'd bring everything back to the lab here in Hart, and they would do all of the earthwork and all the studies, and Cliff could design that dam. And just like Jerry Carmody that we had a few years ago from Pentwater, a retired civil engineer, you know, maybe there are some civil engineers that have a strong background in repairing this dam. So I called Jess Beckman up, and he was our drain commissioner, and I asked him about Crystal Pond and, you know, how we got to where we were and how we ended up driving sheet at Crystal Pond and saving that thing. Gales Pond. And Jess says, we can do the same thing at Crystal Pond. It's child's play in the big world of Hardman Construction Company, and DeWind Dewatering is an excellent soil structure, and that was Clifford's one of his main expertises 40 years ago was soil cementing and concrete structures and foundations and seepage and soil borings, and was on the leading edge of what Wadles do now is soil cementing as they do. So, you know, technology has changed so much in 40 years that I think there's an avenue. Whether or not there should be a millage, I don't think that Crystal is obligated to have a millage to pay for a county-owned structure. I think that's a stretch, but you know, as a county board, we do have to make that decision. But with all of these dollars that have gone by, with all of these different projects, and the big dam failures over east, you know, has precipitated a lot of this dam removal. You know, maybe it's time we save a dam. And in my looking, down at Henry Ford Village on the Rouge, there was a historic dam down there that was saved. So it's not unheard of to save structures. And if it is a repair, if it merely is a repair, maybe this is our best avenue. And the 200 grand that was spent getting to where we are today, hey, you know, some of this stuff you spend money to get to where you are, and then that money is gone. But I like what Lee said about looking at as an amortization of some sort. You know, maybe there is a way that we can amortize these costs out into the future, and it won't be such a pressing matter. But that's my 2 cents. Would there be any more comment? Mr.
Christians.
Yes, Mr. Christians.
Yeah, I will be brief. I appreciate all the good comments that we've received this morning, and And I think my feelings run about in the same way of doing it right, whether it's to take it out or to rebuild it. Some of those thoughts are very encouraging. I did not hear a lot today about safety for our citizens. Once this thing is either removed, or whether, do we continue to have that downstream of water over the years, and how much of an issue could it be for our citizens to get, particularly our younger teenage citizens, to get in there and deal, whether it's with tubing. I think we also, that's another thought that should be coming into it, because it would be a big liability to us as a county, at a county level, because of it being a county park. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
May I address that?
Sure.
On phase 2 or phase 3 of a master plan for saving the dam, why don't we put that in there and entertain, I've had conversations with Great Lakes Energy and Wolverine, their parent company, about putting in a small hydro unit there. It will never be a profitable organization, but it might lead to an electric vehicle station there that they can put their sign up and say, look at the great things we did. That'd be right next to the brand new and efficient outhouses we're gonna get from grant money with lighting. Phase 2.
Phase 2.
But if you have a fish ladder and a hydro pipe there, maybe we can figure out a way to keep kids from sliding down there. You're not gonna stop all the kids. If it's not on a tube, it's gonna be on their skateboard, but that's a great idea.
Well,
Mr. Walker.
I think we can wrap up by tentatively putting this on the agenda for the meeting, the first meeting in December. And if Lee, if you do not have the information, you know, a week ahead of time, please let the administrator know. You know, it'll be on the second meeting in December.
Thank you, sir.
What's the date? Roughly?
December 1st, I think, is the first one.
You want it on the second one?
Pardon me?
December 8th.
12/8.
No, we have.
It's the first.
It's the
Is it?
first.
And the
The
second
first
one
and
is
the
the 15th.
So it'll probably be the 15th.
Gotta move my calendar.
You know, that gives us one meeting to make a decision. So December 15th.
Would this be outside of ARPA?
I just want you to remind you that you have 500,000 of
Yeah.
ARPA money left.
I'd have to look, because I don't know. It's really
Yeah,
not-
we have to look through the final rule to see if it.
Right.
Thank you.
I think it's a valid question.
No, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I surely appreciate it. Mr. Biard, the brownfield redevelopment.
Ron, I don't know if you want to speak to this. I know that the board approved the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority grant. They went out to RFP, and this is the result of the RFP. They're asking for approval to accept the RFP from Envirologic Technologies.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
What was it for?
Brownfield redevelopment?
Yes, well, what is the
It wasn't due. Yeah,
What's
that
it
would be
do?
my question.
Ron?
What's it do?
Yes.
Yeah, what is,
What is Envirologic?
For phase 1.
what does this agreement do?
It allows us to contract with Envirologic to do phase 1 assessments for brownfield. So we're at the point now where we have to have a consulting firm come in and help us move forward with the brownfield authorities projects.
It's not any specific project, it's just.
No, well,
Right.
it would be it's not for any specific
At this time.
property or anything at this point, but they'll be the ones that will help us as those projects come up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And there were some projects that were,
Yeah, we
that
have
were noted.
5 or so that were called out as potential projects in the grant that when we applied. We'd have to get with the owners and see if they're you know, interested in pursuing anything with the brownfield, but we've got some places highlighted that would be good potential for some activity.
So it's essentially, if I may, Mr. Erickson?
Yes, sir.
Essentially a consultant that helps the brownfield committee to walk through
Yes.
the different projects.
Yep. It's a pretty standard thing for every brownfield authority to do.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Biard, Parks and Rec appointments.
We are asking for the reappointment of Jeff Hiddema to the Parks and Recreation Board. He is interested in that, and then we have another open position at this time, which we're not doing anything with today.
Mr. Erickson, I totally support Jeff Hiddema.
Mr. McKean.
Could I speak to Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Jeff's a valuable member of our commission. He has extensive time with not only county parks in Muskegon, but also he was worked at Silver Lake State Park as a ranger for many years. He brings a lot to our board. He's a younger guy, so we like to have some younger guys because there's a bunch of us that are 70. So I would really ask that you ask Jeff to be for reappointment. Conley Bowling has decided after many years on our Parks Commission to retire at 79, and we'll be looking for a replacement for him in the Crystal Valley area. I have reached out to Mr. Heislip to see if he has any recommendations of folks we might talk to out in the area, and I'd like to continue to work with Lee to find a suitable replacement for Conley. Conley did say he would work with whoever that would be to kind of bring him up to speed on the park and how the park operates, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I must echo what Mr. McKean had said, and also Mr. Hiddema has just been great. The expertise that he brings from the Muskegon County Park System is deep, and it's wonderful. His brother's a member of our Sheriff's Department. Hiddemas are very active and looking forward, and the youth component is important also. Thank you. Would there be any public comment at this time? Any reports from departments?
Oh, yes.
Well, you haven't heard from me. Do any of the members have a question that they would like addressed before the meeting on the 15th? Is there anything that is critical to your decision making that I don't have in my notes?
I guess I do. I would like to know how invested financially people in the township would be.
Okay.
Like how much would they contribute to making this happen? And not just a 10-year Band-Aid, but more of the long-term approach that you have there.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. McKean.
Not public comment, but I'll do department head. I'll just pass these out if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you.
So I just wanted to bring you up to date because your next meeting will be after this meeting, and we've been working with all of the park the rec clubs in the county. There's 5 of them, trying to come to a consortium, if you will, of an Oceana rec group. So this is a public meeting that will be on November 21st at 6 to 7 at the County Services Building. Basically, we're inviting the public to come and talk about what could be. Thank you. And I just wanted to make you aware that this is a project that we're ongoing with county parks. We're not running this program, we're just being part of it. There will be some financial consideration that we will consider going forward out of our budget to help support this, but this will largely be a conglomeration of Hart, Pentwater, Walkerville, Shelby, and possibly another rec club as well. But the key here is to get all of the rec clubs together and trying to go forward for Oceana County and the kids and programs in the county. That's we really feel to be strongly part of that program. So it's coming along. Yes, sir.
When you get done with that, I'm going to ask you to stay there for just a minute.
Okay.
Mr. McKean brought it to the administrator's office that there is a potential for money and work to reforest the Marshfield Dam area, you know, once the work is done down there. And Mr. McKean is going to do a letter of support to the group. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. This is
more?
CRA, one of our funding partners, has been able to find a potential grant application with the U.S. Forest Service. This would be for riparian restoration of areas. This is perfectly matched with the Stony Creek area. So what this would be is over probably about, it won't be for 4 years. We actually would, if we get the grant, we'll actually buy the trees in the ground. The trees will continue to grow until the project is complete. They'll pluck the trees out of the farm wherever they're at and then put them into the ground in this riparian area. So there's, the letter basically calls out why that we need the money to do this. It would be for probably $15,000 to $20,000 roughly. So this is through the U.S. Forest Service. I'm not asking for a motion. All I'm asking for is I'd like the county, I would like a letter of support. I already have received a letter of support, or CRA has received it actually from the Road Commission, the Conservation District, and 3 of the landowners that are adjacent to the work that we're doing. So this is just a formality. This is basically to plant trees. It's due today. No pressure.
And Mr. Erickson, if I may, I'm not seeing any objections from any of the commissioners that Mr. McKean moved forward with this letter. So thank you for that, Gary.
And I did not bring this to the board because it did happen fairly quickly. We did apply for a $2,500 grant from the Oceana Community Foundation, or the Community Foundation for Oceana County. And that is for 2 benches to be replacing benches that are rotted out at Gales Pond on the large boardwalk. So these will be, basically we've already asked for it. I hope that we'll get it. It's a formality, more or less, so I apologize for not letting you know. Now you know.
The mini grants, they came up quick, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
And we only had a short period of time
Yep.
to get them in, so.
Thank you for what you do for us, Gary.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Hearing none, the meeting adjourned.
Gary, I will pass that on to Jessica and ask her to print that off for you.
I'm sorry?
The letter?
Oh, yeah, please. That needs to go out today.
Okay.
Yeah. And it goes to DJ Snook. It's in the email I sent to Stacy.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to Jessica and have her print it off for you.
Okay, continuing on, I'd like to call to order the Finance and Equalization Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Ms. Nyett? Here. Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Christian?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here. I'd ask for a motion for approval of the meeting minutes from October 27th, 2022.
Gentlemen, it's very hard for some of us here to have a hearing impairment. If you're gonna have a conversation, would you?
Thank you.
Not to be rude, but I'm sorry.
No, you're excellent.
Take
Thanks
care.
for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, I'll start over again.
Mr.
Ask for a motion for approval of the meeting minutes from October 27th, 2022.
Mr. Hardy, I would like to make that motion for approval of the meeting minutes dated October 27, 2022, and as published.
Do we have a second?
I'll do it.
Morris. Thank you. Moved by Christians, supported by Morris, for approval of the meeting minutes from October 27, 2022. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carried. Are there any changes to the agenda? Changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Support, Walker.
Motion by Beggs, support by Walker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carried. Is there any public comment at this time? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Administrator Biard, consideration of approval of ARPA funds appropriations and additional request for the Register of Deeds imaging project number 2022-20.
So the ARPA information was provided to you at the last board meeting. You had asked for some more time to look that over. In addition, the Register of Deeds came to me and asked for an additional $25,000 because their project is running over a bit more. It may not be the full 25, but they're asking for an additional amount to cover the entire project.
Remind me what that project is?
The imaging, it's taking their old books and
Digitizing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
digital.
Not cheap, not easy. Do you have any other questions or comments? All right, moving on. Ms. Biard, request to increase wages for the road commission in the amount of $1,500, number 2022-27.
I was contacted by the road commission and asked if this could be placed on the agenda to increase their wages by $1,500.
Can I expand on that a little bit?
Please do.
Bill Meyer, the chairman of the road commission, called me, and Bill was on the county commission before he went on the road commission. The road commissioners have not adjusted or had a change in their salary that they get in 14 years. And he said that it's getting more and more time for them, and to keep up, you know, with what's going on, that asked if the county board would consider increasing each one of the road commission members by $1,500. I guess $1,500 increase in 14 years isn't an awful lot.
Not too bad.
Not bad.
What's
And-
the
and,
increase, what is the pay right now?
Yeah.
I think they're at, I'm guessing.
I spoke with him yesterday. It's under 10,000 a year.
Yeah, and this will still be under when they get this.
Yeah.
This will still be
Yeah,
under.
I don't know I can't recall the exact figure, but he said it 8,000 or something.
But I asked Mr. Meyer, their chairman, to get a hold of Ms. Byard, so, you know, put it on the agenda. And I will tell you that I personally support it.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with this at all. It comes from their budget, it doesn't come from us.
Right,
They've
yeah.
got the money to pay for it. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, moving on. Ms. Biard, request to approve the contract for the Workforce Development Service number 2022-30.
Again, the Workforce Development Grant, put that out to RFP, and now a contractor has been selected, and we're asking that you approve the contract for the Workforce Development Services.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, Ms. Biard, administrative review of selected claims for payment and administrative report.
Okay, claims have been submitted to you. Any questions on those? Okay, if not, I provided a copy of my report. Basically been doing a lot of cleanup with the budget, getting things prepared for the new year. We did receive our $105,000. If you recall, we were submitting that, that was under the PILT funds, the $105,271, I believe. It came to us within like 4 days of submitting that for that money. So we received that, and the next payment will be after January 1. Have anything else at this time?
All right, moving on. Any public comment at this time?
Can I invite, Ron, can you just talk about the awesome things you've been doing? I mean, seriously, can I do that?
Sure.
Mr. Hardy? Just talk about Purdue. a little bit. Talk about the MEDC grant, for the water main. You were part of all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just
But
want,
you did.
I want everybody to know about it.
Yeah, so Purdue Chicken is gonna move into the old Oceana County, or Oceana Foods facility in Shelby. It's gonna bring in about 100 new jobs, several million revenue. Still kinda working with them on what their timeline is for hiring and getting moved in there, but press release went out last week, I think, so. That's been good. Workforce development studies kicking off, so that's what Tracy just brought up here. Donahoe's going to go through and conduct analysis of all of our current training and development resources in the county and see what we are lacking and give us a proposal and a path to move forward to help close that gap and put some new stuff in. What was the other one?
The MEDC water
Oh,
project.
yeah, so we had a water main extension project for essentially Peterson Farms. They put in some housing that was all permitted and approved several years ago by Eagle, and then on a subsequent visit they said that they were not okay. They were too close to irrigation, so they had to come up with another solution. So we worked with the MEDC to get a grant for around $3.2 million to extend the water main from the village of Shelby out to that area. So those houses will be able to stay there. It's going to save about 54 families from having to relocate, which is great. And then there's potential for other water and sewer hookup out there now as a result. So
For the Shelby Acres, right?
that's for the Oceana, yeah. Yep. So. All right.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Ron, if I can ask you, I'm sorry, Mr. Morris, if I ask a quick question. I noticed in the publication for the facility in Shelby that they were talking about using local fruit.
Potentially, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So
I
they're-
kind of wondered about it because it's actually for
dog treats.
food.
Yep. So they're going to make dog treats there. I'm not sure what all they'll be using locally.
Yeah.
But
It said in one of the released articles that they were looking at the area because of the potential food. That's why I kind of wondered.
they didn't include me in on the ingredients yet. So.
Or maybe it's byproducts from the peelings or something.
Yeah, could be.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any other public comment? If not, I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll take a short break.
Ron, I'll have those contracts for the workforce development stuff for you here after the board approves that. I'll have Bob sign those and then you can take
Trying
Yeah, there was
to
a thing on
trying to
mine
establish
about-
more training.
Yeah, that's what this
once
is. That's what that right there.
all falls and rolls
Yeah.
together.
Oh, yeah.
It's a chunk of money.
Right. Oh yeah, it's $85,000. I know.
We just do a survey.
Right. Yeah.
I can tell you what you're gonna, pretty much what you're gonna hear.
Right. Well, they
I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
I was highlighting
That
some of the
operational right now.
Kept reading it, I thought.
Oh, really?
But either going to talk to employers, education. I mean, they're going to hopefully talk to a wide variety,
Yeah,
a
exactly.
broad variety of people, professionals. So yeah, I think it's going to be good.
Okay.
I hope so. Anyway, I hope it doesn't come back and say you guys aren't right for anything. There's nothing for you here.
Well, no, Peterson Farms and now Purdue Dog Treats, they're gonna need people trained to make repairs on equipment. People who are, and that's
Right.
high technical electronic stuff. And there I could see the need. And maybe for seasonal, for workers to have some kind of pre-training.
Right. Yep. I'm gonna get my donuts.
You go get your donuts. I'm getting no sympathy.
There's two.
I'm gonna have one also.
But Parks and Rec didn't get that $2 billion Powerball, you can take care of the standards.
They could do quite a few other things.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing was I wasn't related to the person that won. so-
Right.
Maybe you were. They're just not telling you.
What was the cash payout on that? 800 million?
$900 some million. Almost $1 billion.
Man, that'd be terrible.
Sounds like the Bengals are making a return to the
Even
Oceana
at
County
5%,
Fair.
you'd have to spend $45 million a year just to keep ahead of the interest.
Right.
45 million.
So how did board came?
I don't know, I could probably do it though.
Yeah, somehow, some way. I had me a really nice RV. You know, double axle on the back, diesel pusher.
RV, it was 747 with a lounge.
Oh, okay.
Come on.
And then I would disappear.
Yeah, just a small jet and a couple private islands, and then I donate the rest to like St. Jude's or something.
Yep, cancer research.
Sure.
Florida rebuilt. Maybe it's for the presidential bid for DeSantis.
No, I'd want to do more
good things.
More good things.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing.
No, no.
But, like you said, cancer research, that type of stuff.
Oh, boy.
We'll get it over.
And that's the only way we'll, you know, survive. Right. Oh, yeah.
I'm getting old too. I'm not as old as Clancy.
Yeah, right, right.
That's the way, did you know?
Yeah, I know.
Good guy.
Not as old as Clancy, but.
Oh, that's right, thank you. On Saturday.
Okay.
Can you hit the 911?
On my calendar that you won't be.
And they're gonna, you know, we went through the personnel committee and raises and stuff, and then they went to the, basically, the finance committee. And those were approved, now it's gotta go to the board. So it's gonna be
Rubber stamp, maybe?
Yeah, it really, I mean, we looked at it pretty hard, and they got the funds to cover it.
The dispatchers and technical, is that everybody on the?
Yeah. Well, they did a cost of living one time, and they were gonna do it percentage wise, and Ray and a couple of people in the office said, you know, this isn't fair to the other guys, you know, why don't we take the total amount and just divide it among them? So rather than, because Ray's the highest paid guy there, and he just felt it was better, kind of the same amount by tiers, you know, the new workers.
You get 5% or 10%.
Yeah, we had 2 meetings almost, a week apart that lasted like 3 hours, so.
I don't think we can.
No. Sure, I think so either.
Well, look, I'm seeing that, but that doesn't really have anything to do
No,
with it.
it's not infrastructure, and it's not, it's not a water supply or.
Yeah, I don't think.
ARPA money.
Well, I don't want to say it now, but it's kind of like, the sheriff said, it's like, kind of like kicking the can down the road. 10 years from now, it's gonna be another 200 grand.
Right.
Or more.
Yeah.
Hi, ladies.
If I owned
Good morning.
a house on that property, I'd not be happy with it, but I don't want to
Bad doing
Right,
it,
yeah, exactly.
I don't want to pay taken off.
There you go.
Because I did a sheet, and I was gonna bring it up, but, well, he was here.
What? Oh, I thought you were talking about
Well,
my cup.
John brings up an important point.
NASCAR approved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's gonna be 100 or more.
So this was,
It'd be 100 grand if they told us, oh, it costs 100 grand to fix it.
I went through their cost estimates. They said between 250 and 300,000, so this is rehabilitation. This was the steel, high-low. This was the hydraulic dredging, high-low. And with restrictions.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna haul it to a certified dump site.
Right.
So, you're looking at, with no restrictions, pushing 600 grand. I know he's like, he didn't include the spillway, he didn't include any dredging. I know Eagle's gonna require. This option is ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna spend $1 to $2 million, but removing it, they had basically the 100 to 500 without the breakdown. Right. Yeah. I don't even want to spend that. If we can get grants.
How are you?
Yeah.
Good.
You know.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, well, it's stewardship.
I'm just providing you information.
Yeah. The park is still gonna exist.
Well, I bet you're just loving all the quiet, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Cecil prop, the original prop last night comes back.
I don't know how that.
Right.
Well, my sister-in-law, we we had,
The park has a lot of
How are you doing, and the boys as well?
And my
So,
sister-in-law was staying at the house.
Adjustment, big adjustment.
It goes back to
John going.
The people
the
were
water's
coming to pick up
edge,
the
the
puppies,
park
she's like,
expands.
you're never doing that to
Now
me
it's on the
again.
front side.
Right.
Boys are back.
Yeah, it's kinda
I mean,
hard.
out of that deed,
I did it
saying-
twice, and then, yeah.
Casey
But we still had to
continues
keep
with
some.
the investigation.
It should
My
have,
girl,
there
oh,
should
she's so
never
funny.
have been
I
portions
almost
of that
have
sold
you on
to private
speakerphone when I
business.
call at night.
That should have all remained
Okay.
Here in the back.
county property. Not sold.
She's looking at the
But,
window,
you know,
where-
Tom's
like,
the
where's
owner of
mom?
that pond. Now he goes to,
Right, yeah.
and he said, well, I'm having trouble finding the deeds and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The guy owns the land, that's butts up against the pond.
Right.
I cannot tell you.
Yeah, property stops.
Probably get
Stops
you a
at the water's
phone
edge, so the
number.
water's edge.
Well, that gal named Lisa.
That's how it works on Lake Michigan, when the water comes up, when the water comes down.
Yeah, she runs it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And tell her your situation, the nice sooner.
Yes.
But he was talking about the deal.
Right.
I read that paper the other day.
So then, I guess go ahead.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a quick and easy.
Just so that everybody, just so that everybody knows.
I just feel bad about sticking together county residents with gas bill.
Yeah, it's just not.
It just pushes it down the road.
Right.
Oh, I mean, if we can get Lance to cover most of it.
It's just a matter of
It's the
time.
cheapest way out.
You know, we've heard those hotlines, Chuck Schumer.
This is not gonna.
Well, yeah, he needs to be fixed. He needs 100 million fixed, or it needs to be totally
Which is $1 million to $2 million.
Right.
The ARPA funds was a good question, but I didn't think it did because it's not like city.
Right.
And certainly not infrastructure.
it legal? I guess the idea is just to do with
But, Bill is right. We all need to keep that in mind.
So basically they're paying us.
Yeah, I'm heading towards that.
Are you? Oh, that's when it's supposed to get nasty.
With repairs. So the repairs aren't.
Of course, are you in the path of another hurricane?
She's getting it right now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
She said it rained last night, probably an inch or two. Winds blowing.
Oh, okay. Like so last. Thank you.
That's it.
But it's built basically as a recreational swimming hole.
But anyway.
I could certainly get caught in a hot light situation.
Don't wanna be that way.
We get your elsewhere as opposed to.
Yeah, the daughter-in-law, grandson is a
Gary,
grandfather.
she was getting that ready for you.
Okay.
That's the new
They're gonna be there for 4 or 5 years.
I was reading through these, but
Right across the hospital.
Tracy made that
Okay,
change at the
yeah.
last meeting.
I know the Valley
Just
General
on purchase,
here
they
is
already
about
own, they already own the nature preserve. This is
that
just
long. So they'll refurbish the building and probably gut everything out of there?
I don't know what
they.
It's in your No, I don't know where, I don't have a copy of the actual resolution itself.
It's right there. They redid the whole
No,
electrical system.
that's just a motion, but somewhere there's a,
Oh, okay.
resolution, so.
If you want to.
Is there actually a resolution? It doesn't reference, the motion doesn't reference it.
Oh, no, it doesn't. So this is, and I can't change this on here, so.
I just wanted to draw that to your attention.
Yeah.
So it's,
It does.
so it's development.
Yes.
Under all the apartments?
Yeah, it's not purchase, they give it a donation to the conservation.
Mr. Maynard, welcome.
That was actually,
Again.
so he put me in touch with, they wanted to donate and after discussion, we couldn't, it wasn't feasible for us to go like this. So every district has a staff and they can do that.
Still good, I'll announce this change. Thank you, glad you caught that. I thought there was a resolution on the motions, but not. I guess it is just a motion, so.
priorities here. And, I mean, do you think the microphones are adequate? Do you think we should raise the volume?
I don't think it goes up here, it only goes into
Just a recording.
It's
Yeah.
hard to hear Bob. I think he talks softly.
You know, Gary, whenever I do that, raise your hand or say something, because I do have that problem. Please just, you won't offend me, just, you know, do one of these so people, so you know.
You have a full kitchen.
Thank you, Gary.
In your
I know Lee was having trouble here. He was kind of.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. My husband brought me up.
So if we see you go like this doesn't mean you agree.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
I would ask that everybody raise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I welcome you. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting for November 10th of 2022. And I would ask that the clerk do a roll call, please.
Mr. Christians?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Ms. Matt?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here. Approval of the minutes from the October 27th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Walker, I will make that motion that we approve the minutes as printed and published, dated October 27, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Do we have a support?
I'll support Hardy.
And Mr. Hardy supported. Are there any questions or concerns on the minutes? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Conflict of interest disclosure regarding the agenda items. Do any board members have a conflict of interest on the agenda items? Hearing none, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, approval of the agenda as printed. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda as
Thank you, Mr.
published.
Christian. Support?
Second.
Ms. Mayette, support? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment. Are there any public comments at this time? Hearing none, Mr. Hardy, ARPA fund appropriation.
Yeah, it was pointed out to me, there's one little typo that needs to be corrected on this. If everybody wants to take a look at the fifth line down, where it says purchase, that should say development. The property is already owned. So, Conservation District for the development of a nature preserve at Stony Creek is how it should read.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for pointing that out. I will go ahead and read the motion. Motion 2022-20 to appropriate ARPA funds for the following: Shelby Township Housing Development Project in the amount of $50,000, Pentwater Hart Trail and Safe Route to School in the amount of $50,000 total, Village of Hesperia for a pavilion in the amount of $25,000, Conservation District for the development of a nature preserve at Stony Creek in the amount of $50,000, Levitt Township upgrades to Cantville Lake Park and boat launch in the amount of $38,560, Elbridge Township Park upgrade in the amount of $20,000, Shelby Township for the purchase of development of a 35-acre park in the amount of $50,000 and additional funding for the Register of Deeds imaging project in the amount of $25,000.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy, I have one question for you. The Village of Hesperia for a pavilion for $25,000, is it proposed that that is going to be in Oceana County?
My understanding, yes. I think that was in the application.
In the allocation, that's what it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Not Newaygo.
You All of their park area on M20 is in the Wago. So this must be up by the dam or something.
That's what I'm
there,
thinking,
I would
yeah.
think, so.
I don't remember the exact application, but.
But thank you for that information, Mr. Hardy.
I'll second the motion.
All right.
We have motion and support. Are there any questions?
I'll just restate what I said last time. I like the fact that this is, you know, covers the whole county, east side, so it's good. Thanks.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Mr. Erickson, Crystal Valley Dam, I do believe that we will have no
No
action
action.
taken on that. It'll be back to us on the meeting on the 10th.
And the 15th?
15.
15.
12:15.
12:15, thank you. Mr. Christian, Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, number 2022-26.
Mr. Walker, I would like to make the following motion, motion number 2022-26, to approve the request for proposal that is provided by Envirologic Technologies Incorporated for the purpose of brownfield redevelopment.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Do we have a support?
Support that, Morse.
Moved by Mr. Christian, support by Mr. Morris. Any comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Christians?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Mr. Beggs, number 2022-27, Road Commission.
I'd like to make motion number 2022-27 to approve a wage increase in the amount of $1,500 for each Oceana County Road Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Do we have a support?
I'll support Hardy.
Moved by Mr. Beggs, support by Mr. Hardy. Any comments or questions?
I have a,
Yes.
Chairman, maybe should we have an effective date?
It will automatically be January 1st.
Okay.
You may want to include that in the,
I will amend my motion to make that effective January 1, 2023.
thank you.
Mr. Hardy?
I'll second.
So, thank you, Mr. Morris. And, any comments? I would just like to mention for anybody who was not in here during the work session this morning, this is the first increase for the Oceana County Road Commissioners in 14 years. So it's a pretty mild increase for 14 years. Any other questions or comments? I call for the vote, please.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yep.
Mr. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Ms. Mayette, Parks and Recreation, number 2022-29.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Jeff Hindema to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a 3-year term to expire on December 31, 2025.
Thank you. Do we have a support?
I'll support. Christians.
Moved by Ms. Mayette, support by Mr. Christian. Any comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Morris, 20-22-30.
Chairman Walker, I move that we approve the contract between Oceana County and Jeffrey Donahoe Associates LLC for workforce development services and allow our chair to sign the contract.
Do we have a support?
I'll support Hardy.
Moved by Mr. Morris, support by Mr. Hardy. Any questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Christian?
Yes.
Ms. Mayette?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. It is before the commissioners report. It is not on this, but I'd like to ask if any department heads have any comments they want to make at this time. Hearing none, reports from the commissioners.
Payment of claims.
I'm sorry, payment of claims.
Motion for board approval of accounts payable and release of funds for 11/10 of 2022. I do want to add one thing. If you're looking at your computer screen, the one that was emailed out is incorrect. You were given a new printed out one. There was just a math error in it that Amy corrected for us. So if you want to follow along, ambulance fund total $242,479.53. FOC fund total $1,908.26. Indigent defense fund total $9,111.84. LOCT fund total $1,512.50. Canine unit fund $139.89. Department of Veterans Affairs $3,816.55. Technology and Innovation Fund $6,350.89. Foreclosure Fund total $2,498.96. Building Department Fund total $15,606.67. For a general fund total of $260,954.51. A grand total of $544,379.69.
Do we have a support?
I'll support.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Moved by Mr. Hardy, supported by Mr. Beggs. Any questions or comments on the payment of claims? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Mr. Beggs?
Yes.
Mr. Morse?
Yes.
Ms. Mahette?
Yes.
Mr. Christian?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes. I believe we have all of the motions done. I'm gonna ask again, do any department heads have any comments they wanna make at this time? Hearing none, report from the commissioners. If it please my fellow commissioners, I'd like to report first because I think I can answer a few questions of what I have to report. We are working on some things at the transfer station, and I had a meeting with the Ferry Township Supervisor yesterday, and he is going to be setting up a meeting between a couple members of his board. And Mr. Morris, you represent Ferry Township?
I will be in January.
You will be in January? Yeah. It probably would be best because this is gonna go into next year, that you and I meet with that group, and we'll have some things to bring forward after that meeting that we have. Positive things at the transfer station. This all started with Dr. Sobey, and we're just getting back with it again. Very, very positive things coming up. The hospital transfers, we had a question about that at the last meeting. We have a meeting set up, and Paul, I'll give you the date, Paul. I think it's the 11th of December. I'm not 100% sure. I will get it to you. You know when I have it. I was driving down the expressway when I got a call and told me what it was. I didn't write it down at the same time, but that meeting is set up. On Monday, Mr. Erickson and I have a meeting with the director and the chairman of the board for the medical care facility to talk about concerns that were brought before this board. So we will be moving forward on all three of the things that the two that were brought up at the last meeting and the other one. So thank you. Mr. Beggs, what do you have for us?
I don't believe I have anything to report today.
Thank you, Mr. Beggs. Mr. Hardy?
No reports.
Ms. Bayette?
The Department of Veterans Affairs has two events planned this weekend. One is a 5K, excuse me, I think, at I believe 10 o'clock in Shelby. And then they have another one on Maple Island Road at the VFW Hall. It's halfway between Hesperia and 5 Mile Corner, and it's for veterans to meet with the VSO office, and if they have questions about stuff, anything that they handle, they can go and meet with the VSO office there. And you can find the information on both of those events either at their website page, OCDVA.org, or at the county website under Department of Veterans Affairs. I would assume it'd be there, I didn't check, or on Facebook. was the Oceana County Department of Veterans Affairs. And, that's all I have, thank you.
Ms. Mayor, you mentioned a while back that the Veterans Affairs, was I correct in remembering the Veterans Affairs working on, the possibility of getting a vehicle to transfer veterans?
That is their goal.
Okay. Do they have a mechanism set up yet to accept contributions for that?
That I don't know. I don't know that. I'm sorry, I can find out if you like.
Yeah. Very worthwhile project. You know, I'm aware of that, living in the UP where it was 140 miles to the veterans home from my hometown. And they've had vehicles to do that for years.
I can't hear you.
Okay. My question for Ms. Mayette was about the Veterans Affairs. They're working on getting a vehicle to transport veterans. And I asked if they had a funding set up, you know, so that they was accepting donations on that. And she's gonna let us know. So, but thank you. Mr. Morris?
Oh, the main thing that I'll talk about is the continuing conversation about the internet, broadband in our county. We had a meeting earlier this week with Moonshot, Merit Moonshot, or something like that. And just interesting stuff. I mean, this is so complex. It's hard to figure out. So I'm glad we have Tom Stevenson, the guy that came that one day to try help us walk through this process. But he just emailed yesterday or a couple days ago that there are people driving around Oceana County right now that they're creating maps, and they're going around, they're looking at the polls, and they're going to create a more accurate map as to who really has internet and broadband internet and who doesn't, because right now the maps are pretty poor, pretty broad. So we're looking forward to that. That map is supposed to be finished by Christmas, supposedly, and then we can know a lot more about where the pockets are in our county, and then how do we fill them with what companies and how. I do have a question though. I guess I want to get your thoughts. They asked me on Tuesday, does your county, would you say, want to use private ISPs that own the lines, or would you rather the county own the lines? And I said, personally speaking, I would rather just we farm it out to private ISPs, and they take care of it. We don't have to worry about it. But she said, that's great, but just so you know, the advantage to owning them yourself, it costs more money up front, but then we, as a county, have more flexibility for our people about which ISPs utilize the lines, and we have an asset then. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, what your feelings are on something like that. And I know I'm just throwing it at you, maybe you don't know right now, but just off the top of your head.
Bill, if I may, I think Holland just passed
a millage,
and that system down there for the city of Holland was over $20 million.
They're going to own the lines, and
then own the lines. But looking further ahead, as the technology changes and as the transmission rates change, that means upgrading equipment and more cost. In their system, because it was all fiber, they could allow several different ISPs to use the same lines. So if you wanted, let's say, Charter, or if you wanted Spectrum, or whoever, you could select what company you wanted. But owning and operating that fiber line could become a real debt.
That's where I was at
in the long run. Yeah.
Cost, debt aside, I think I don't think that's a government's job. I think that's a private enterprise. Internet is an important infrastructure, but I don't believe it's part of the responsibility of government. That's a private entity issue that we need to do our best to stay out of their way and allow that expansion for private enterprise.
Yeah, that's where I stand too. Anybody feel the other way? Mark.
I just have another question. Is it mutually exclusive?
As far as
private versus government?
Yeah, I mean, it's who owns the lines. Yeah. I mean, the benefit to them owning it is then they can, like a private ISP can then determine how much it's gonna be, the service is gonna be, but then they foot the bill.
So, oh, never mind, you take forever to explain this to me. I don't, I'll catch you later.
Mr. Morris, for myself, I 100% concur with what Mr. Begg said, and I think if everybody's heard me say before that government very seldom can do it as efficiently as the private sector.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
So, anything else for us, Mr.
No,
Morris?
I don't, thanks.
Mr. Christian?
Yes, sir, Mr. Walker. When I left the meeting a couple weeks ago, I was able to attend. It was Ms. Cavazzo, Lynn, from our Pentwater Township Supervisor, along with myself and Joe Premovich, and we went on and looked at Big Sandy Bend, or Big Sandy Point, and it's where there's a bend in the north branch of the Pentwater River, and they are experiencing a lot of erosion issues of the sand going downhill into the river and then moving further downstream, and it's becoming more and more of an issue. And it's complex because there's multiple agencies involved, and in order to get any kind of big equipment in there, they run into access points of how do we get into this thing. And so it's an interesting problem. I know they're working with Wimserdick and with Fallon in trying to find some solutions, and it'd be interesting to see in the next year or two what they come up with for a resolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Mr. Erickson?
Thanks for covering the ambulance transfer issue and also the medical care, Mr. Walker. And District 10 Health Department has secured a dentist for the heart office, and we should be seeing services out of that office.
Great.
And I believe that covers it. We had a good parks today. We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker, if I may.
Yes.
I went back and looked up the application for the funding for Hesperia. It is Vita Weaver Park, and that's 198 North State Street in Hesperia, which is in Oceana County on the White River, right next to West Michigan Avenue.
Okay.
So,
Thank
if you know where Ed's,
Ed's Market.
west of that.
I should have thought that you had known that you had all of the bases covered on that, but you know.
Well, I read them so long ago, I had to look it back up.
We will probably be asked a question someplace down the line that, you know.
That application was filed, just for info, I can't remember all of them, May 27th.
Okay.
So.
Very good.
A little rusty, anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy.
Yep.
Ms. Anderson, do you have anything for us?
Well, it's been a busy week with the election, and we're still working on the canvas of it, so we'll continue on Monday with that.
Well, when I left about 12:30, you still had several precincts to come in.
I know, we didn't get out till 3 o'clock.
And for those of you who weren't here, our county administrator was recruited by our county clerk. When the ballots come in and they're signed in, whatever they do here up at this table, county administrator walked them all down to the clerk's office so they could be tabulated. So,
thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
So, do you have anything else for us? Is there any public comment at this time?
Gary McKean, 247 South 56th Avenue. My address is Mears, but I live in Benona Township, actually. So Ms. Mayette brought up a 5K run. It is Veterans Day tomorrow. I'm not sure if any of the commissioners are veterans, but thank you for your service. 12 years ago, I started volunteering for the USS Silverside submarine in Muskegon, Michigan. And I thought when I first came in there I could cut the grass and wash the windows. I knew nothing about submarines or anything like that. But I learned from a lot of men who served on the submarines, and I've become a pretty competent docent for the museum. So much so that the 8th grade Hart kids, when they come down there, they ask for Gary to be their guide, so I get to do that. But I thought, you know, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night like, why the heck do I do what I do? And then I start to realize that there was a gentleman in 2014 by the name of George Hawkins who came to the submarine. He was on the submarine for 9 war patrols in World War II. There's a couple of pictures. George is the older guy, not me. And that Christmas, he wrote me he sent me a Christmas card, and he told the story. He was there for 5 hours, and it was an amazing experience. But rather than me tell you the story, I'll just read it in George's words. George was he was a torpedoman first class. He was like the foreman of the afterward torpedo compartment. I'm not certainly if the incident I'm about to tell you about is our 9th or our 10th war patrol, but it certainly is stuck in my mind all these years. We were patrolling as normal when Commander Coy, Jack Coy was the lieutenant commander captain on 4 war patrols. When Commander Coy spotted a small convoy, we proceeded into position of our attack and sunk 3 vessels in the encounter. Our problem was getting away from the enemy. There were many destroyers and destroyer escorts zigzagging back and forth after our attack, trying to find us. Commander Coy was trying every maneuver in the submarine manual to get away. In the end, Commander Coy all he could do was to run silent and run as deep as he possibly could to evade the enemy. All motors and equipment were turned off, with only the propellers and very slow cavitation to maintain buoyancy. No coughs, sneezes, or even burping were allowed, as even one of those sounds might give away our position. The destroyers and destroyer escorts continued to pass over us, dropping depth charges. The attacks seemed as though they lasted for days, but really it was 8 hours. One of the enemy vessels actually passed directly over our sub, and I could hear the propellers with the familiar swish, swish, swish of the blades hitting the water. It was a very scary time, with everyone wondering if our luck was about to run out when one of the depth charges could very well sink our ship. When all the attacks were over, the count was 73 depth charges had gone off trying to sink us to bring us up to the surface. To anyone who's ever been on a submarine during a depth charge attack, it's hard to imagine the force of a barrel of TNT going off and shaking the ship at 300 feet below the surface. Our sub was nothing but a steel vessel with no shock or sound absorption material on the boat to lessen the effects of one of these devices. You can't brace your body as you normally would, otherwise you might break your spine. All you could do is hold on to something or be in your bunk either lying down or sitting. Believe me when I tell you that when no one can imagine the size of this attack, all you could hear was the click, click before the device went off. You could only try to think pleasant things and not of the situation to keep you from losing your mental control. You've seen you've seen animals react to explosions on the 4th of July. Now imagine them cooped up in a steel cage with these explosions going off beside them and having no place to go, trapped below the sea. These repeated explosions were certainly a very difficult time for us. Granted, people can reason, but it doesn't lessen how scary it is for you. 73 explosions over a short few hours is terrifying beyond description. For me, my salvation in this attack came in 2 ways. First was Commander Coy. His cool demeanor was a calming ingredient in a very stressful situation. This was true not only on this day but all others, as he was in command of the sober sides. He was a true leader in every sense of the word. I never saw him lose his calm and reassuring way, no matter what the situation. He got us through this attack and many others, which left our crew saying we had the very best skipper in the entire fleet. The other thing that helped us was the fact that we knew the boat that we were on was built well. Our boat performed well and aided Commander Coy in performing to the best of his ability. George goes on to say, "It's important to me that everyone knows that I did the very best job I could." He was 18. And at the end he wrote on here, all wars are bad, no matter how well glorified. War is really bad. George has passed away. He was 94, I think 2 years ago when he died. But this is why we carry on and do what we do. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McKean. As a side note to that, I just read the diaries of the engineer from the B-52 bomber that crashed in the Porcupine Mountains during World War II on a training mission. They had a hydraulic leak and the number 3 engine caught on fire, and it took them down in an ice and snowstorm. They missed Lake Superior by less than 100 yards when they bailed out. The south winds were carrying everybody back over the lake, and all the members of that B-52 survived that April crash in the snowstorm. And one of them was in the woods walking in circles for 2 days, and the local people found him walking, and all of them survived by bailing out. Very interesting article in the diary. So, you know, there's a lot that our service people that endured, not only in wartime, but some of them in some tough times stateside too. So, and I personally thank them for what they do. Do we have anything else to come before our board? Then I believe we can stand adjourned. Thank you.
We're gonna have you sign a couple things, but Scott got ahold of me and said that